me that. I got my little sous chef back with me tonight. You know, or Chef Jay, we can call him, or sous chef Jay, Julian. Very excited for what we're doing tonight. So we're doing 3 different cuts of beef. All right. Luke asked for more beef preparation, so definitely gonna check that box today. My buddy Dan is trying to feed my family well, asked for beef tenderloin, so that's gonna be one of the cuts that we do. And Cooper asked for us to do risotto, so we're gonna do a classic risotto Milanese tonight. And Bree asked to see the proper searing technique, so we're going to show 2 different ways to sear our beef products tonight. All three of the steaks that we're making, T-bone, ribeye, and beef tenderloin, are all going to be sous vide and then pan seared, with the exception of one, which we got a little treat in store for that one. We're excited for it. All right, so hopefully you guys enjoy, and we'll go from there.
I'm ready.
Are you ready? All right. Well, today we're going to talk about beef a little bit, risotto, some broccoli rabe, a couple other traditional things. But first, we're going to start with the beef. All right. So 3 different cuts of beef in front of us here. All right. This is your standard beef tenderloin, Black Angus, USDA choice. So the 3 grades of beef. Prime is the top, usually reserved for restaurants, specialty butchers. Choice is the next one below that, and then select. This one is the ribeye. All right, Julia, the ribeye, and this one here is our T-bone. All right. T-bone and porterhouse, very, very similar. What they have in common is there's actually 2 different cuts of beef in there. That's beef tenderloin. So this one has this small piece here to the left of the bone is actually beef tenderloin, so it's the same kind of cut. On the right is sirloin. What's the difference between porterhouse and T-bone? Is just the size of the amount of tenderloin on there. All right. T-bone is towards the front of the animal, so because of that, the tenderloin portion is a little bit smaller, and as it moves back down the animal, the proportions shift a little bit. Excited to do these today. We're going to cook them sous vide. All right. So sous vide is a technique that's been around for a while, but hasn't really gained popularity until the last, I'd say, 15 years or so. Definitely in the last 5 or 10. With the introduction of at-home models that you can use, Anova, Joule, those kind of things. It was originally kind of developed on the railroad system as a way to prepare beef foie gras, foie gras. So in the Irish goose liver, duck liver, a lot of fat in there. So as it cooks, it renders down and shrinks up. Sous vide is a way, or they developed it as a way to minimize that shrinkage as opposed to using it at the end. All right. So I'm going to show you our techniques to seal this up. Sous vide means under vacuum. So when we cook them inside of the water bath, we're going to vacuum seal it. I don't have a vacuum sealer at home, so we're going to show you a couple of water displacement methods. So we've got our water preheated in our sous vide to 131 degrees. It's going to give us a nice medium rare plus steak in the end is what we're looking for. Beautiful thing with sous vide is once the protein or whatever it is, vegetables, whatever you have in there, reaches that set temperature for the water, it's not going to go above it. So it's really hard to overcook a steak using sous vide. Can you screw it up? Absolutely. So the longer and longer these proteins sit at this temperature, the more the protein structure itself is going to start to break down, and it's going to get kind of mushy. All right. General rule of thumb is once you hit the temperature that you're looking for, you've got like 4 hours before you have to really start worrying about that. So you've got some breathing room in there. All right. Really great for cooking eggs. Eggs is something we'll do a demo on a little bit later on to talk a little bit more about it. Just how much of a difference or an impact a few degrees can have on the finished product. All right. But today we're focusing on steaks. All right. So we're gonna keep it relatively neutral. All right. Just some kosher salt and some fresh cracked black pepper. All right.
This one.
Generally speaking, for every inch thick the protein is, it takes about an hour to cook. All right. For that, we don't have a vacuum sealer. All right. So how do you make something under vacuum if you don't have a vacuum sealer? Well, use a technique that's called the water displacement method. Water displacement is relatively simple to do, but at the same time, really effective. All right. So what we'll do is we're going to seal the bag about 3/4 of the way. All right, just leaving a little gap in the top here. All right. We're going to slowly drop it into this pot. Just cold water inside of here, and what this water is going to do is as the protein sinks down, it's going to force all of the air out of the package and out through that hole in the top. All right, it's not nearly as effective as vacuum sealing, obviously, but for the purpose that we need to do, it's going to work out just fine. So I'm going to push this bag all the way down until the bag is just outside the top of the water, and then seal it in the remainder of the way. And we've got a relatively sealed up bag. All right, so we're going to do the same thing now with our ribeye. You want to be careful with, especially for longer cook periods, are things that grow anaerobic bacteria really well. Garlic is an example of it. What is anaerobic bacteria? It's bacteria that grows and thrives without the need of oxygen to be present. So where this temperature for the water is set right towards the higher end of the temperature danger zone, we need to be super careful about bacteria growth and food safety. All right. Sous vide was, one of the other original purposes of it was pasteurization. So the longer these proteins sit at the temperature, the safer they'll be. It's not like that, 165 degrees for 15 seconds for chicken. You can cook your chicken to 158, 160 degrees. It's just gonna be at the temperature zone for longer, so it has time to kill off and it's in there. All right. So garlic you need to be careful with. The other thing you really want to be careful with that I learned the hard way is raw onions. All right, or raw shallots. We talked a little bit about the importance of a higher temperature and sautéing them and caramelizing them for in the beginning of making up your short ribs, so that they release a lot of that really kind of aggressive in your face onion, shallot kind of stuff. By putting raw onions in there, that onion's never going to get over 132 degrees, so you need to be really careful with that. All right. So Julian's all suited up. He found the oven mitts. So what we're going to do is we'll take these steaks, we're going to drop them into our water bath. You see in the back there are ping pong balls on the top. Serves two purposes. One is it acts as insulation. All right, so this water is circulating at 131 degrees right now. By having those ping pong balls on top, it's creating a barrier between that surface or the top of the water and the air temperature, so it insulates it. And two is it acts as a barrier to avoid evaporation. All right. If we were doing a 4-day short rib, I've done 3-day chuck roasts before. The water sitting at the temperature for so long, you're going to evaporate into some of the water. By having the ping pong balls on top, it helps kind of slow down. So the starch for tonight is a classic risotto Milanese. One of the popular misconceptions with risotto is that it's a dish, when in reality it's more of a cooking method. All right. You can make risotto with a number of different things aside from rice. Rice is the most common. Two different rices that are most commonly seen, both the short grain rices, so an arborio and a carnaroli. Tonight we're going to use an arborio rice. One tip when you go to the grocery store looking for the arborio or carnaroli, try to find rice that's stored in vacuum sealed packages. All right, the rice itself is relatively porous, so it can go stale just sitting on the shelf in the grocery store. So if it's vacuum sealed, you get a little added layer of protection. All right. Going through the mise en place for what we're going to need tonight. All right. Julian's getting super pecorino romano, which is the main difference between pecorino romano and Parmesan cheese is pecorino romano. One where it comes from in Italy, and two, it's always made with sheep's milk. So we get a sheep's milk cheese. Really simple, or minced up garlic, minced up shallots. All right, it's not the same as red onion. All right, much more delicate, much more mild, much more refined, if you ask me. And the cellular structure is also different, so that when it cooks, it kind of breaks down and melts. So you're not going to have giant chunks of onion in your risotto. So you're going to have nice nuances and flavors from it, but not any of the kind of strength or the texture of an onion in there. Saffron, all right. Yes, I went out and I spent $15 for this little container of saffron at the grocery store today. Saffron, by weight, one of the most expensive spices or expensive products in the world. By weight, more expensive than gold. All right. Why is it so expensive? It needs to be harvested by hand. All right. And what they are a little stigma of a small flower. Really pretty looking flower. It's a purple and yellow flower. And what there are, these little threads, all right? And there's only 3 of those threads in every flower, all right? So because of that, it's a very labor-intensive process to harvest them, and the product itself, you know, supply and demand, all right? But what it does, in addition to flavor, just by opening it up, you get the aroma, which is really nice, but color as well, all right? We're going to do a dish with some turmeric later on in this remote learning process. Turmeric is known as poor man's saffron. You can get a really nice vibrant yellow color, like you can get from saffron, but for a fraction of the cost. So, but for my students, we'll go with the good stuff tonight. All right, so we're actually going to use real saffron. We've got some chicken stock coming up to a simmer on the stove. Super important and vital component of making risotto. And then we should be good from there. The only other thing we need is one of my favorite ingredients, some whole butter, which we'll use at the very beginning. All right, so we're gonna finish assembling our mise en place here, then we'll head over to the stove. All right, Cooper, you're up. Time for some risotto. So risotto, one of my all-time favorite, dishes to make, just because it's so versatile. All right, you can add so much to it and take it in so many different directions. From adding sweet pea puree using pea tendrils and fresh pea greens to get this really vibrant and aromatic and light. Green risotto. You can add butternut squash. Easy way to clear out your refrigerator. You've got leftover grilled chicken from a barbecue and some roasted vegetables. Throw it on to some risotto. You get a brand new meal, and it's fantastic. All right. Once you get the hang of it, relatively easy to make. All right. So I'm gonna melt some whole butter first. All right. The first thing we're going to do is sweat down our shallots. All right. So shallots are going to provide kind of a base. All right. A decent amount of flavor in there. All right. I like shallots, so go with it. Just trying to sweat these down. Okay. So looking for the edges to start to get translucent, and for them to kind of start melting down a little bit. All right. What makes risotto so creamy and delicious? It all boils down to the starch. Okay. So the stirring is super important. We've all seen the videos of, stir the risotto, stir the risotto, stir the risotto, and it's a vital component. All right. But there is such a thing as stirring it too much. All right. As you stir, you're incorporating cold air. All right. So you're cooling dropping the temperature of the rice down, which can result in being kind of pasty or gluey. All right. The whole reason why we got our stock simmering in the corner here and adding to it is when we add it to the rice, we're not looking to drop the temperature down. When we did our short rib demo, we talked all about the recovery time of the cast iron, and we were trying to get that really hard sear on our short ribs. We want to keep the recovery time of our rice to a minimum. All right, we're looking to cook the rice, not to cook it and cool it down. Heat it up and cool it down. Heat it up and cool it down. It's not going to result in really good, or end up with a really good result. All right, so our stock is in a nice simmer. All right, and it's going to maintain that temperature throughout. All right, so our shallots are starting to get nice and translucent. All right, so what we're going next? Some minced garlic. All right, add that to it just until it gets nice and aromatic. Right now I'm getting kind of a medium-high heat. When it comes time to start adding the stock, we're going to want it to be about a medium to medium low. We don't want it super low because then it's going to take too long for the risotto itself to actually cook. It can result in some poor results. All right, but we don't want it cranked up all the way high because it's just going to be too quick. All right, so nice and garlicky. All right, very aromatic. I'm going to drop the heat a little bit. We'll bring the rice over. Now I want to kind of toast the rice a little bit, all right? So I'm stirring it to coat it in the butter, all right? I'm going to toast for about a minute, just to make sure that all the little grains of rice are coated with the butter and the fat. So what we want is to kind of lubricate it so they're rubbing up against each other. That rubbing action is what's going to cause the starches to really release and end up with that kind of really creamy, classic risotto texture. All right? Looking at it, I can see they're starting to toast a little bit. All right. So the next thing we'll add is a little bit of white wine, white grape juice. We'll bring this up to a simmer. I'll reduce it down a little bit just so we can make sure that we're burning off any alcohol that's in there. So once that reduces down a bit, we'll add our saffron. All right. Don't need much, all right? A whole lot goes a long way in here. But now we have a little downtime. A little closer look at what these kind of little threads are, all right? Very funky, cool little ingredient. Super aromatic, all right? You know, just a great thing to have that I didn't get introduced to until I was in culinary school, which is new, all right? But it's something that I've really grown for. Typically, I don't buy into the buying the most expensive things out there. I like kind of creating with minimal. But saffron is one of those things that there really is no substitute. You know, we talked a little bit earlier about turmeric being the poor man's saffron. Yes, it's great for color, but you get so much more from saffron itself. All right. So our wine is reduced down. So I'm going to take a couple of the stigmas and just crush them up into the rice. Give it a little swirl. Now we're going to start adding our warm chicken stock to our rice, all right, and turn our heat down to medium to medium low. All right. Going to add about a third of a cup of chicken stock. All right. I'm going to stir it in. I'm going to let it absorb. When it reduces down to the point where you can drag your rubber spatula across the bottom and it stays parted, all right, you know you're ready for more stock. All right, really? So we'll continue to add that as we go through. All right, probably every 2 minutes or so. Not going to videotape the entire process because you get time for that. All right, you get Call of Duty to play, you got or better things to do. But every time that the rice is thirsty, we'll add a little bit more. How do you know when it's done? All right. The rice is going to tell you, okay? The risotto is really cool with, the rice itself is only going to absorb so much liquid, all right? When it starts to get, absorb slower and slower, you're getting to the point where you want it to be. The big thing you don't want to do is to overcook it, all right? You want your risotto to be a little al dente, all right? And the other thing you want to make sure is consistency-wise, is you don't want to put it onto the plate and have it stick up into a mound or a volcano of rice. That's not what really risotto should be. It should rest easy on the plate. So if you give your plate a little shimmy action, it's going to move with you. Okay. So we're almost to the point where we're ready to add our next batch of stock. As I'm stirring around, it's leaving a trail behind us. All right. You know where you're ready for your next addition. The other thing I want to stress enough is the cheese. All right, we're going to add some really nice pecorino romano to this. We're going to wait until the very end to do that. As cheese cooks, all right, the fat can break and separate. All right, we've all seen a cream sauce with a layer of oil on top of it. You don't want that to happen with our risotto. You don't want to cook cheese. All right, you just want to melt it at the very end and incorporate it. All right. So now we're at the point, I've blabbered on long enough and killed enough time, that as you're dragging the spatula through, it stays parted. All right, so we're going to add another 2 ounces of stock or so. All right. And repeat the process over and over and over again until our rice is nice and cooked. What's left? All right, we need a sauce and we need a vegetable. All right, sauce is taken care of. We're going to do a nice little compound butter with that. Not worried about that, not scared. Vegetable. All right. Original plan was to go with asparagus. Quarantine, Sunday morning, grocery shopping, not going to happen. All right. What's next? All right, let's go with broccoli rabe. Not going to happen. Broccoli rabe, super cool vegetable. Not a member of the broccoli family at all. It's actually a turnip, or a member of the turnip family. It was like, all right, let's go with that. Not happening. All right. So instead, we have these little broccolini. All right. Still just as good. Broccoli rabe has some nice, really nice bitterness to it, which I can appreciate. Broccoli rabe is kind of a cross between a broccoli and a Chinese broccoli. Hence, or as a result, it's got these really nice long stems and smaller florets at the top. Entire plant is edible. I do like to remove these kind of, or kind of leafy parts from the bottom, half or so of the stalk. I'm going to talk about what's called big pot blanching. All right, and it's exactly what you think or what it sounds like. So, what big pot blanching refers to is blanching in a big pot. All right. Why do you want to blanch in a big pot? All right. Or what is blanching? All right. Blanching is partially cooking. All right. And then we do what's called shocking to it. Very popular with green vegetables. All right. And why do we do it? To really bring out and preserve that bright green color within. All right. So with these, we'll drop them inside of our simmering water and blanch them. Just drop them in ice water to stop the cooking process. And then right before service and right to order, we'll saute with a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, some garlic, salt and pepper to bring it bring it the rest of the way. Big pot blanching is, as we said, pretty self-explanatory. Doing it in a big pot. Why is it important? All right. Purpose of blanching is to quickly cook and kind of release the gases that are just beneath the surface to really bring out the vibrant green colors. All right. If you have a small pot and you're trying to blanch a whole bunch of green beans or broccoli inside of that small pot, when you drop all those vegetables into that water, the water temperature drops way down and it takes a while to come back. What's that called? Recovery time. All right. By using a big pot filled with a whole bunch of water, the goal is to minimize that recovery time to the point where it's non-existent. We don't want that water to stop boiling. All right. So if that means that we're only putting in 3 little stems of broccolini at a time to preserve that from happening, that's the way it's going to be. So be it. All right. We don't want that water to stop boiling. All right. Super important. Okay. How do we know when they're done? You can use the tip of a knife or taste them nice and al dente. Because when we finish the cooking process, they're not going to cook that much more. Okay. The last purpose is just to kind of warm them up, hit them with some butter, the garlic and salt. Finish the rest of the way. The water inside of that pot, super salty, almost to the point where it tastes like seawater. All right. As this broccolini is simmering in there and blanching, it's going to absorb some of that water. All right. So why not if you season? Why not if it tastes good? All right. It's going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We're going to cook the vegetables. But we're also going to start the seasoning process. All right. So that's pretty much what we're looking for here with the broccoli. All right. Do it ahead of time. All right. Simmer it or blanch it off, shock it in the ice water, and then right before service, bing bang boom, heat it up, flash it on the plate, and we're good to go. So we're back to our stove now. Risotto's coming along nice. All right, so now we get this kind of yellowy orange, golden colored risotto, and that's all a product of that saffron. All right, saffron's working its magic in there. 99% of the way done here. That's an exaggeration, 95% of the way done. So while we're waiting for that to finish, we're going to blanch off our broccolini. All right, some kosher salts. Okay. And then wait for that water to come back up to a simmer. All right. We'll drop our broccolini right in, right next to that pot. I've got our ice water ready to go to shock it. All right, icy. Just looking to really halt that cooking process. As soon as we're there, we know we're tender, we know we're al dente. Into the ice water we go, and then we'll end the story. All right. So, key with this, don't want that water to stop boiling. All right, so we're gonna add our broccolini. Been simmering for 5-6 minutes here. Nice and bright, vibrant green. All right, nice and tender. Into the ice water we go to shock it. All right, stop that cooking process and preserve that bright green color. All right. Important thing here is we don't want it to sit too long inside of that ice water. All right? We're just looking to stop the cooking process. As it sits inside of there, it will eventually start to absorb some of that liquid. We don't want that. All right, we're just the only purpose of this ice water bath is to stop that cooking process. So another 10 seconds, we should be good to go. They're relatively thin, so it's not going to take very long. So our risotto's done, nice and al dente. Can rest easy. All right, nice kind of fluid motion to it. So recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of pecorino romano cheese. All right, so that's our 1/4 cup there. I'll stop in there. All right, extra cheese. All I'm going to stir that in just to melty melt. Once again, not looking to cook this cheese, just looking to melt it, incorporate it in. The longer this is cooked, the higher the chances it's going to break down. We don't want that. All right, good to go. So our steaks are cooked. Been in the water for probably an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. So I know that from edge to edge right now, they're about medium rare, but they don't look all that appealing. All right. That's the one downside of sous vide cooking, is it cooks it perfectly from edge to edge, but you don't have that crust on the outside that you get from grilling or searing or roasting. What's that called again? The Maillard reaction. Doesn't happen with sous vide. So two ways that we can battle that. One, you can sear it before you sous vide it, or two, the way that I kind of lean is searing at the very end. All right. I'm going to show you two different techniques today. One that I'm going to use with the T-bone and the ribeye, and the second I'll show you on the fillet afterwards. Cast iron skillet on here, screaming hot. All right. I love my cast iron pan. All right. Into that pan, a little bit of neutral oil, so some canola oil. All right. Swirl it around. All right. And in addition to that, I hit it with a little bit of whole butter. The butter is going to bring us flavor, but if we use straight butter, it would burn to bits before our steak got seared. So just a little bit of butter, but mainly canola oil. All right. Then we'll add our steak. We'll start with the ribeye first. All right. Into the pan, we're also going to add a little bit of fresh rosemary. Some garlic as well. So we can get a nice hard sear. Alright. We will flip so nice and golden. And we're also keeping in mind that this steak is fully cooked. All right, so all we're doing here is trying to get to, or imply that Maillard reaction, which incorporates a decent amount of flavor as well as some texture. Okay, we seared off our T-bone. We seared off our ribeye. What's left is this poor little lonely fillet in front of us. All right. Again, perfectly cooked, medium rare from edge to edge. The beauty of sous vide, it just looks kind of funky and weird. It looks almost raw on the plate. Because we're missing that crust on the outside, the result of that Maillard reaction. So we use cast iron on the other two steaks as one method. The other thing we're going to do today, or I'll use for this guy, is what's called a Searzall. Thank you, Chef Somerville, for introducing this to us at the Pro Star Boot Camp this year. This has become one of my favorite little toys in the kitchen since October. So many good uses for it. And what it is basically a heat diffuser on top of the torch here, so that you can use it to sear, to toast, to warm, whether it's creme brulee or heating plates for competition. Many, a wide variety of uses that you can do with it. But tonight we're going to use it for searing our steak. All right, so our steak is here, and just like if you're doing it in the pan, you want a little bit of a fat or a barrier of fat between the heat source and the protein or the muscle. So a little bit of oil here, a little aggressive, but okay, why not? And then our Searzall. All right, so it doesn't take very long for this to heat up. All right. Got one side seared. Alright. We'll flip it over, do the same thing on the other. Being wary that since this has been flipped over, it started to sweat a little bit, so we've got a little bit of moisture in addition to the fat, so it may take a little bit longer on this side.